All right, we are live. So I'm Greg. For those of you who were just watching our white wine tasting for the club, we are now onto our red wine tasting. So my name's Greg. Stephen is in the press bar below, and then Dennis is up top on his couch.
Chilling, chilling like a boss.
Sorry about that. All right. So for our red wine tasting, we have three great wines. Domaine Bourgeois. We also had him in our white wine tasting. This is his regional red, 2018 vintage. We have Domaine Regnado from Morange. And then this is also his 2018 vintage. Then we have Michel Arcelin, one of our most popular producers. This is also a really cool label. His regional wine, 2016 vintage. I always love Michel Arcelin's wines are just fantastic for the price point and what you're getting for them, and they always excite me whenever I get to try them.
Yeah, I mean he's a special human being, there's no doubt. But we've got two other good wineries to talk about before we get to him.
Yeah, I want to jump right to it, but looks like we have lost.
So this is the red wine selection for some people on the exclusive red wine club, and other people that are part of our mixed club will get a selection of all the whites and all the reds. But so again, similar to the whites, just try to mix up the selection. So to give people a nice variety, we don't want to try and give anything that's going to be too similar. So Domaine Bourgeois, we know a lot from actually the Cremant that we had for the white comes from there. Morange for Domaine Regnado is kind of the closest appellation to Domaine de Cromé, and we pass it most days. And this vineyard sits right at the house of the winemaker. So, and then we have Monsieur Arcelin, which is based up in Pommard.
Now you have to realize. I mean, we're in Burgundy. Burgundy's a really small place. I mean, it's the area that we call the Côte d'Or is about at the maximum a mile wide and like 30 miles long. All three of these wines are within like a 10-minute drive of here, of Domaine de Cromé. I mean, these are all wines that are just right here in the southern part of the Côte de Beaune, and we like to sort of focus on these wines because they're what we call the simpler appellation, or the regional appellation, which is the Bourgogne, the Burgundy, or Marange, which is a village appellation. But when Ellie and I first came over here 35 years ago, no one talked about Marange. I mean, there's been a huge renaissance, which is not even a renaissance. It's like a revolution in the way that the simpler wines are being treated around here. It used to be that these areas that we're talking about right here, not the Arcelin per se, because that's from Pommard, which has always been one of the noble appellations. But if you look at Santenay and Marange, they were wines that were always considered sort of rustic, and only that was only because they were farmers' wines, and they were wines that were made to be sold off to the factory towns. I mean, they were wines that were not necessarily considered to be of the in the constellation of the great wines of the northern part of Burgundy. But all that's changed. And it's really not surprising because it doesn't take much to change it. It just is a little bit of attention to detail, planting the right grapes, keeping your yields right, it's judicious use of oak in the way that the ways that wines are raised, um, pruning for quality as opposed to quantity. I mean, and then all of a sudden, you have things like Santenay and Mérange coming out of the out of the pack, and they become not just decent wines, but they become sort of like the shushu, the darlings of the Bone Wine Bar set. And that's kind of where we are right now. And there's been a lot of that in what we do here at Elden Selections, in looking for not just new producers, but the new appellations as they open up. And there's a whole we could do an hour talking about what those appellations are, and you should stick with us, because that's kind of what we're trying to do with the Burgundy Wine Club, is to introduce these kind of reasonably priced wines from really good producers that are coming from new and interesting regions in Appellation. And this is, and what we're talking about tonight is a good example of that.
Yeah, Merange was recently. I think it was last year. I had a Premier Cru from Merange, and for the States, it was a great price point, and I loved it. Like I kept going back and buying that bottle, and just kind of do what you were speaking of. It was I didn't really ever hear about it prior to that, but I fell in love with it. Like and then this wine, and then I've had more of Regnado's wines, and that region is just like you said, just fantastic and a
And
little bit
also,
not well
it's
known.
it's the region, but it's also the producers. I mean, you
Sure.
can if you don't have somebody who's willing to take the thing on their back and be the locomotive to make it all happen, then it doesn't happen. But once it does, then everybody else in the village follows along and follows suit. If somebody comes along and proves that you can make great wine in an area where nobody ever thought that you could make great wine, then all of a sudden you've got it's like that's a revolution. It happens almost overnight. Now it can't happen overnight, because you have to in many cases you have to replant the vineyards. But I mean,
So over a decade.
it'll happen in a generation for sure.
Yeah. It's also funny that you mentioned that you're giving like it's the wines were factory town workers. That's where it was going. When again in the States, it's not really factory town workers aren't necessarily drinking wine. It's more like cheaper beer or stuff like that. So it's just kind of
Well, yeah, no, but I
funny
mean,
to have
I
the
mean, there was a time in France where, I mean, there were places, towns and villages that didn't even have water, didn't have wells. I mean, people drank wine as their beverage.
wow, just all day.
Yeah, but it would be low alcohol wine, and they'd water it
Sure.
down, and that sort of stuff. It wasn't wine the way we think of it. It was
Right.
it was
Interesting.
that's another discussion we have sometime. But tonight let's talk about, where are we starting?
Yeah, we
Bourgeois, Domaine
start.
Yeah,
Bourgeois.
I think, yeah, it's it's
Steven,
the
take it
lightest
away.
for me. It's the lightest of the three, and I would recommend, people wait for like a nice summer's evening or a nice sunny lunchtime or something to open this Bordeaux. I really like it, but it's definitely of the three, it's the freshest. Um, I mean, you and Pascal go back a long way, Dennis.
We met at there's a wine festival called the Saint Vincent Tournant every year in January, and it was 1989 that we met Pascal. We used to take our hotel barge on the canal, and would moor up just across the canal from Pascal's place. So he started making wine in 1985, and we met him in 1989.
Yeah.
And I can remember drinking his 1985s for a long time, because he was just getting started. He didn't really have any outlets in that to sell it and that sort of thing. So we were among his very first clients for sure.
Yeah. And we've done a great tasting recently of his Santenay Premier Cru de Gravier along with Ella du Wab side by side tasting. And that's what I mean. Like, this wine is like an introduction. You can then go up and drink some of his other appellations and get like a little bit more concentration and then things. So this is, I mean, he's already, I think for me, he makes some of the best whites that we have on our list. Clos de Carbonate is one of his our signature and one of his signature wines. But
And
it was really interesting to do that.
The elements of the reds. Sorry, I was going to say the elements of the reds are sort of like the fundamentals of what you're looking for. When you got that black the black fruit. You've got that sort of balance of at, fruit acidity and the structure. The structure is right. It's just this is a wine where you shouldn't be afraid to pull the cork. I mean, it's what we would call everyday drinking Burgundy, and it's priced to be so.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one really does remind me of the Le Gravier that we did do the tasting of, except for it's not as complex and the secondary notes aren't similar, but like the freshness and the fruit notes are kind of have those kind of the same things that I saw when I drank the Le Gravier.
Yeah.
Just kind of like a mini version of it.
Yeah, that's the point. The style of the winemaker is prevalent through their whole range of wines. So it's like, I know I'm like a broker. I mentioned this on the previous one, but it's like, like you can hear, you can watch a film where you just can detect, and it's interesting. An interesting discussion would be, how, when you make up the wine, how much of an influence is the winemaker, how much is the terroir, and how much is the vintage. And I think when you taste the Santenay Gravier and you taste this, you really are like, okay, you can really detect that the winemaker influences in both wines.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. And that was what was so cool about doing the Gravier tasting too, is seeing that their plots of land are so close together, him and Beaujeu and Elodie, and just seeing like the difference, and it was a big difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
But
so I would encourage people, especially people that are in the club, to have a look on our site for our other tastings, because we do explore some of the other wines, maybe some Premier Crus, and it'll be a kind of a jump in intensity and complexity, and we dig into the wines that way, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so we move on to the Morange.
Let's do it.
2018 as well.
It is also 2018, yes.
So if we just come back and just, I mean, because I'm always, it's always in the forefront of my mind that some people are just, introducing themselves to Burgundy. But, we have four classifications, starting with the regional, which is the Bourgogne, and then we move into the village, which is next. And this is a village wine. That's why it says on the bottle the name of the commune, the village, Morange, and single vineyard de Saugeau. So then within the village, you have a Premier Cru vineyard, and then you have independently Grand Cru vineyards. And so there's only 4 different classifications within Burgundy. People think it's very, very complex, and it can get complex, but really it's not that difficult when you think of just 4. So we're moving from a regional into a village wine here.
Yeah, and it's fantastic especially for, I mean, the price point of which it is, but it's interesting that between the two of them, like the Morange tastes warmer, if that makes sense. It's like when you said the Bordeaux, we should open up at a lunchtime or something, like maybe during the day when it's a little bit warmer if you like reds. And this one is just like it's so much warmer, like to the taste, which is kind of something I never really thought about until now.
Yeah, I think there's a deeper mid palate note. I get even a touch of that thing that we've been talking a lot recently about. I get a touch of the cola note in the mid palate of it.
Yeah.
The fruit ripeness that they've achieved in this 2018 vintage with Regnador, I think, comes through on the palate. They've really, I think we were actually there for the 2018 harvest, myself and Dennis. So Yeah, I think it's a great wine at a great price point, and it delivers a lot of it hits a lot of markers.
It's got, and there's a good bit more tannic structure here than there is in the Bordeaux Bourgogne. And now, I mean, and whether that's to do with what we were talking about earlier, when we said that Marrons and Sauvignon were considered rustic wines and they've just mastered the tannins, or whether whether it's in the winemaking, because I mean it could be vestigially in the winemaking, and that they're leaving more, rather than completely destemming and that sort of stuff. Maybe they're leaving a little bit more of the tannic material in the wine, but for sure you're getting there's a bigger structure in this wine, and a kind of pretense that it's going to age.
Yeah. And I would really encourage people as well to look on the site. And as you introduced, I think the Premier Cru Clos de Loyer from the same producer. So that's a Morange Premier Cru. And then to drink them two side by side with this, that's a really interesting, that's the thing to do when you have your friends over, is open this and have the Premier Cru, and then open the two wines and then discuss the differences. Because
it's interesting that you say that, Stephen, because I've just been working on a couple of promos that are going out to our groups, and I was working on a Regnado 3-bottle tasting of the Marrons Premier Clos de Loyer, this one, the Marrons Sauget, and then they also do this. They do a Bourgogne Haute Côte. And so the three of them,
which is different again.
Three of them from the same producer in the same year is a very interesting little tasting in a box.
Yeah.
And that's
really great value
at Elden. Is Elden Selections is like we'll present to you this idea of like a promotional case that gives you, like, if you want to open up for your your friends and family, just take one of each of the bottles out of the box, and it's like there's something didactic about there's a built-in tasting. I mean, the idea that you can have 3 different appellations from the same producer from the same year, that you can learn a lot just by popping a few corks and using your taste buds.
Yeah, because I think traditionally we all would have, it would have been more normal, especially in the world of wine, not so much in Burgundy, but, to make sure, I have 6 people for dinner, I need to get at least 4 bottles of the same wine so that we just enjoy it. So our site is just so suited to being able to construct these different styles, and the whole evening ends up revolving around these subtle differences in the wine, and sometimes big differences, but it's fun. But this wine for me, it's lovely, and again, it was chosen for the club as a distinct difference to the Bordeaux, not necessarily better or worse, but different.
Yeah, everything depends on what you like as a person, and even what time of day is. I don't know, like. Yeah. I don't look at wine really as like, which one's better or whatever. I look at it as, what am I doing? Like, if I'm hanging out with friends, not eating food, maybe I'll do the Bordeaux, or if I'm having food, maybe I'll do the Morange, or depending on what I'm having.
What do you do for breakfast?
Oh man, champagne. Always champagne at breakfast. But but yeah, it's interesting that everyone's always like, I don't like this wine, or this one's better, this one, whatever. It's just kind of, to me, it all depends on what you're looking for that day.
Yeah. So
but
yeah,
you always look for Burgundy.
I think they've done a great job, and also I think the future is bright with these guys, because the 19 we've tried as well, and that 19 vintage is special for these kind of wines.
And 2020, you actually got into the vat with them, didn't you?
Yeah.
Just about. Just
It's a kind of a special moment because in these horribly COVID-y times, the barrel tastings were not possible, but we're just coming out of the lockdowns, thank God, and starting to get back to normal, and finally having guests back in the domain.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this live or not too far into the future, it's going to be great to welcome people back to the Domaine de Chrome. If you're watching this in like 2026 on YouTube, then you'll just look back on your history books and how what we've
no. If you're watching this in 2026 and you still have these wines in your cellar, drink them.
Yeah. All right, shall we move on to Michel Arslan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. See, it was good that we waited. It was good that we waited. You wanted to jump into Michel Arslan at the beginning straight away.
Because it's just so, like, his story is just so fascinating to me. Just like his background, him being 91 now, 92.
I think Dennis should, just fill us in very quickly on Michel.
We met Michel Arslan through a contact with a winemaker in the Côte du Rhône, whose wife grew up across the street from the Domaine Arslan. And Michel Arslan is a force of nature. He's he was born in 1929.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He was born in 1929, and he is still going. He's in his 90s. He's like still going strong. He still has the same tractor he had in the 1950s. He's until very recently, and I'll explain this, had this labeling machine. What do you call it in England? They call it a Heath Robinson thing. In the United States, they call it. It's one of these machines that just goes, and it's like, but you just, I mean, it was like it's like something from another time. But the interesting thing, and for them, the sad thing through their whole life was that he and his wife Meadow had two daughters, neither of whom wanted to take over the domain. And they were working out, succession plans and how they were going to rent the vineyards and that kind of stuff. And then, but one of the daughters' sons, from a very early age, took, started hanging out with his grandfather in the vines, and the next thing you knew, it was like he was really, really into it. So Pierre-André now is in his mid to early to mid 20s, and he is working with grandfather, and grandfather skipped a generation, but he's got a right hand man, and they are, and the domain looks like it has a future. But the funny thing is, all of a sudden now when you go into Michel's place, there are two tractors. There's a brand new one, and Michel's old one. There's the old labeling machine. There's the new labeling machine. And then you go in, and Michel says, "Have you seen our website? And have you checked? Are you following us on Instagram?"
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, this is a guy I've known forever, and all he wanted to do was talk about wine and winemaking and vineyard work and that kind of stuff. But now he's like seen in his grandson this just the potential of succession and survival, and it's so beautiful. It's such an amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic story. But let me tell you about the wines. I mean, Michel Arslan is, how they always used to say, "We'll sell no wine before it's time." Michel Arslan does not like to drink his wine until they're like 20 years old. So we have this guy who has this library of wines, and you can go back, and for pretty much any year that you want for the past 25 years, he's got some wines from those years. And like, for instance, he's at, how do at the Clos de Vougeot, the Confrérie de Chevalier de Tascam every year give out a special. They do a special tasting, and if you pass the tasting from them, they'll give you a special label. So it's a passed down label, and everybody, all the producers, put in the wine from this year, from the past year, and they put it up for judging, and it's judged yes or no, and they get the label or they don't. Michel Arcelin put in 2015 he put in his 2001 for the Tasman label, and he got it, and 5 years later he put in his 2006 for the Tasman label, and he got it. But no one else does that. He just says this wine is ready. Finally, it's ready. I have to wait 15 years, but this wine is ready. and that's just his ethic. And you question him about it, and he looks at you like, why do you find that strange? It's just the way he's always done it. And so here we are. We're looking at a Bourgogne from Bourgeois 2018, a Marange from the Regnados single vineyard from 2018. But this is Michel Arcelin's Bourgogne from 2016. And there is no way, we wouldn't have been able to get his 2018 because he wouldn't let you have it yet. So we're now looking at his most recent release, and amazing thing it is.
Yeah. And
so you can't try his. So he doesn't drink his 2016 until he thinks it's. So he doesn't sell his wines until he thinks they're ready to drink.
Well, he'll. I mean, if he wouldn't sell you this 2016 if he had his choice. I mean, he'd wait. But I mean, we say, look, come on, we got to sell some wine here. We can't wait till 20 years old.
Yeah. I love hearing you talk about him, Dennis, because you guys go back a long way, and it's a deep, honest relationship, which is, it's cool to be around. And when you see you guys hanging out and drinking wine, it's a privilege to be there. And he is a special dude, and like, so we all know classy older men that have, they haven't just walked the walk. They don't talk the talk. Yeah. And in this case, we know two of them. I know. But I do think his character comes through on the wine. So it really helps to understand who Michel Arcelin is and then drink his wine. Sometimes if you don't get the man, you mightn't get the wine. That's what I feel. So I would urge people to just go onto the site, have a look at his page, have a look at him, and learn a bit more about the story, and then drink the wine, and that will help you get his wine more.
It's a once in a lifetime story too. I mean, what an amazing guy.
Yeah,
I could. That's another thing we could do for half an hour. I could talk to you about Michel Arcelin. Unbelievable.
Sounds like we need to start making more YouTube videos.
His wines are not brash. They're not big. They're not like big up front. They're graceful and elegant. They need a little bit of time to open up, but definitely not too much time.
20 years, give or take.
Yeah, in the bottle. But once you open the bottle, I would encourage people not to decant his wines, and to definitely not leave them to see how they are the next day. For me, once they're opened, they there's a delicacy in his wines that I think you need to just enjoy at the moment. That would be something I would say, that from my experience with his wines.
We also have a really. This is someone who says, I'm a traditional winemaker, but he makes some of the most delicate wines that you'll ever taste. Even when they're way too young for his taste, they're just so elegant and lacy and we're talking about Pomard, which is generally considered a really sort of muscular Appalachian. He's just got.
He's got his own style, and it's very interesting. And again, just coming back to people that are just getting a grip of Burgundy, this wine is regional, so we're back into the regional from the previous village. But the vineyard is 3 separate plots within the commune of the village of Pomar. So, our small winemakers, they're not making, when some of the negociants make regional wine, they're pulling grapes from miles around all over Burgundy. But that's not the case with this. Like, these are small family-run domains. In this case, a grandfather and a grandson, and they just make wines from around the village. So when it says regional Bourgogne on this bottle, you have to know that these grapes come from the commune of Pomar. And so, you get extra secret value in knowing that and in experiencing that. But how will you ever know unless we tell you, unless we help you know? And that's what the whole point of the club is. To help you kind of find out these little secrets that are not obvious on the bottle. So I would say, yeah. And maybe if you find one of them secret wines that we've kind of half smuggled into America, you'd need to contact Greg separately.
Greg at BurgundyWine.com.
And beyond that, I mean, the whole idea of the club is to give those who just want to have an introduction, a quick understanding of sort of what we do. But what we do at Elden Selections is much deeper than that. I mean, we can do this sort of stuff that we're doing with the regional Appalachian and that kind of stuff on all tons of different levels. Whether it's the vintage, whether it's the region, whether it's the producers, especially the producer, because that's where we focus. I mean, if you don't, we've said right from the very beginning, the only way to get to know what's good in Burgundy is to get to know the producers, and that's what we've been about for 30 years now, and so I mean, these club selections are meant to introduce you to styles of wine, but they are also meant to introduce you to the producers that we represent, and that's more than just wine knowledge. That's sort of like human contact and everything else. And what we're looking for is to try and show you kind of how you can be like involved. How do I say that? I mean, how you can how you can know more than just reading tasting notes and wine reviews and that kind of stuff. You can actually get to kind of know who makes the wine and that kind of stuff, and that's what we're all about.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that too, because I think now more and more people want to know where everything is coming from and who's making it and things like that. So if you can go to our website, burgundywine.com, and read about all these producers and kind of like know what their philosophy is and know how they grow the grapes, know what they put into the wine, all that stuff. And it does add a lot, I think, to the drinking the wine, because you understand like the labor behind what goes into these wines. And
how you go down to a wine shop and you buy a bottle of wine, and you go home and you drink it, what do you know about?
Yeah.
We're here to tell you everything. Probably way more than you ever wanted to know. I mean, certain people won't like what we do, but there are certain people who love what we do. And and if you're one of those, we're happy to have you aboard, because we'll just keep talking until
But it's also about farming in a sustainable way, and making the wines with an organic philosophy. Like this week, if you check out our Facebook page, you'll see some work being done in the Clos de Chateau, which is the vineyard that's connected to the domain de Cromé here. And, you know, you see 15 people up there weeding by hand a 7-hectare vineyard, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
which is about 14 acres.
this is effort to
No,
do
it's about 2.5 acres.
in the
Oh, okay.
proper way. In the proper way, it's effort to
A lot. Anyway.
yeah. So yeah, it's nice to acknowledge that, and it's nice to feel that when you buy a bottle of wine, that you know that you're contributing to that philosophy of sustainability.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And I know we've talked about like just conversing back and forth about how a lot of our producers and even you know, more and more people don't want to use the pesticides and everything that used to be very popular, like between 1945 and, you know, closer to today, because it adds salt to the soil and that changes the complexity of the soil. And so it changes the flavor of the wine. And, you know, you don't really want salty wine when you're trying everything. So look, when you talk about sustainability and everything, and it whether or not, you know, that's the thing you're looking for, it does change the way the wine tastes. And, you know, if you produce it better, then it's going to, you know, like, or if they farm it the way that they're farming it, like especially Michel Arslan and all of our producers, it's going to have a better quality. So so it just helps with the flavor profile of the wines and just how they taste.
Yeah.
More than, yes. And it also helps the environment too.
Yeah.
But there's double benefit to it.
Yeah. So then I think so that's the 3 selections of reds. Again, it was they were chosen in mind to give you guys 3 different experiences. Hopefully that was achieved. Hopefully you enjoyed them. I would say, you know, during the summer, don't be afraid to you know, explore the emails that you get, which show the wines that are connected to these, and enjoy, keep exploring Burgundy. And of course, we're always available at the end of an email for you guys to help and advise you.
Yeah, I mean, we live for the you know, the emails that come in who are asking questions and that kind of stuff. I mean, if we can convince you and show you kind of a passion that if we can win you over to the passion that we have, I mean, that's our main goal. So I mean, please, if you ever, you know, don't hesitate to send in questions. Yeah, if you just want to talk about Burgundy, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. My email address is greg@burgundywine.com. Very easy, very simple to remember. So if you do have any questions and anything I can't answer, I always have contact of Stephen and Dennis that can help me out. Or you can always call me, but love talking about wine, love talking to people, worked in restaurants forever. So yeah, feel free to give me a call or talk to me about it. But follow us on our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook. We have a really cool video of it's called Meet the Winemaker Domain Michel Arslan. And it's just a really cool video of how he produces his wines and his vineyards and all that stuff. They're right in his backyard. So check that out. And then follow us on our other social media.
Literally his backyard.
Yeah, I know. It walks out, it goes out of just a door in the winemaking or in his house, and then you just have these rows and rows of vineyards, and it's really cool to look at and watch. So, and you also get to see his really old wine labeler and corker and everything.
That's right. There's a video of that.
And his tractor.
Yeah. So check that video out. Check out all of our other videos, and yeah. So it was
even better if you have a bucket list moment, come to Burgundy and meet the man himself.
Yeah.
And you also might meet Michel Arslan. Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah. What'd you say? Say that again.
I said you could come to Burgundy and meet the man himself, as in Monsieur Dennis Sherman.
Oh.
Yeah, right, really.
Yeah.
You better hurry.
Thanks for watching,
It's great to
everybody. And
Yeah, that was fun and interesting, and come back soon. And
yes.
thanks for your support. I mean, it means a lot to us. That's what we're here for, and the fact that you guys have signed up for the clubs and the club and that kind of stuff means so much to us, because it does indicate that there are people out there who are interested in the same sort of things that we're interested in. We give it our all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do. So yeah, thanks for watching again, and we'll be back next time. Our next live tasting is June 13th. And then we have another one after that in July. So keep up with all those things, and